Hi, welcome to another episode of ARU Startup Podcast. And in this episode, we are going to talk about the role of universities in supporting future founders, SMEs, and the student startup ecosystem. We are joined by Dr. Tom Williamson as our guest speaker, who is an assistant principal at ARU Peterborough, responsible for the Faculty of Business, Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Faculty of Creative and Digital Arts and Sciences. He has a significant experience in higher education and also running his own business. In this episode, we will be talking more about the skills and why entrepreneurship is important for everybody, regardless you want to start your own business or go in your employment journey. So let's welcome our guest speaker. Hello, Dr. Tom Williamson.
Hi, Omkar. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Tom. My first question before we straight jump into some hard questions around the university's role in supporting student startups. Who is Tom and what is your current role?
So I'm Dr. Tom Williamson. I'm Assistant Principal at ARU Peterborough, which is the exciting new university development within ARU's family of education providers up in Peterborough. So my role there is supporting the exec team with getting the university up and running, but also in the day-to-day sense, I look after and lead the Faculty of Business, Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Faculty of Creative and Digital Arts and Sciences.
And you also come from a business background. And if I'm not wrong, you're still running a business. So could you please explain more how you come, what's your background been, and what's your journey in higher education look like, and what made you to this role today as an assistant principal?
Absolutely. I'd love to say there was a plan and there was a very clear path set out at some point, but truth is a lot of this has been good fortune and opportunity. So when I was an undergraduate student, I had a very close friend, Daz, was an IT student, and the two of us got together and decided with our combined skills and spare time, we would start a small business to make a little bit of beer money on the side. So we started a web hosting company, which I still operate to this day. So it's been there throughout this entire journey and has really been the primary area that I think that I've learned a lot of the lessons from business and working in industry. What was really interesting though, and as a student, there were a few different startups I got the habit and sort of hobbies that got out of control, but all responding to various different opportunities, whether that was selling ink cartridges at one point, getting involved in retail and delivery services, and some more high-tech startups, so developing specific software and specific web applications. Now, most of those, if I'm honest, didn't have longevity in them, but they were great projects and huge learning opportunities. But I'm pleased that a couple of the startups did have legs and have gone on now for longer than I care to admit to on the podcast. But the exciting thing for me was when I graduated, the university, I was at Coventry University as an undergraduate, and the team there were on the verge of launching a new student entrepreneurship centre and a place for students to be able to get support if they were interested in this area. And I was very fortunate in getting one of my first real jobs working in that centre, supporting other students that were going on a similar journey to the one I'd just completed. That led on to the opportunity to do a bit of guest speaking and eventually some lecturing. So I got into the teaching side of things, which was never something I set out to do, I wouldn't say, but I really did get the bug and I really enjoyed being in that space, that academic space, not only facilitating skills development and sharing knowledge, but having that opportunity to discuss ideas in a really robust way with students and sort of enhance your own understanding and learning in that area. So I did that, and that led into taking on a course leadership role of an entrepreneurship undergraduate program where the students actually ran their own business as part of the course, which was really exciting, and embedding mentoring and business plan development and sort of various different opportunities to engage with market throughout the course. And, you know, all of these things then lead to further opportunities. So one really pivotal moment was when I joined the board of an organisation called Enterprise Educators UK, who are a phenomenal organisation that represent everyone working in this space, but beyond, and working with educators in all discipline areas that want to be more entrepreneurial in their teaching. And so I joined the board and had engaged in a lot of the different support programs they had to offer, and ultimately was privileged to become the chair of Enterprise Educators UK. And I think I highlight that because that was the first opportunity, I think, for me to take on a leadership role and actually be involved in something on a national and international scale, supporting the organisation in its growth and achieving its strategic mission. So that then led on to a number of other academic leadership roles. Again, not necessarily ones I would have foreseen myself having. I had a student experience brief within the business faculty, ensuring that students had positive experiences and that we were looking at the full breadth of opportunities that students should have on their courses. And then I became head of school, the head of school for economics, finance and accounting, a very large school with 130 colleagues and nearly 3,000 students. So a real step change from two people running a business together for a little bit of their money, all the way up to something far more strategic and far more, in terms of a footprint and its importance within the context of a university. So that sort of journey, I think the common threads there was very much one of being entrepreneurial myself and finding those opportunities, perhaps being a little bit brave to step out of a comfort zone and take a path that maybe wasn't the one I originally foresaw myself going on. But it was also because you find purpose. And I think the area that I really felt passionate about and that I could make a difference about was this whole area of universities and small businesses working together, which ultimately led to me completing a doctorate in exploring the role of universities in supporting small businesses in their area, in their regions. And as a result of that, I think developing a bit of a research strand in that area, looking to understand the challenges and the opportunities in that space a bit more. And as a result, I've been able to join various steering groups and committees. So I'm on the management board of the Small Business Charter, which accredits business schools within the UK for their work with small businesses. So specifically looking to recognise those that are doing excellence in that area. And recently I've joined the steering board of the Lilac Review, which is an essential piece of work looking at the barriers around disabled founders. So nationally, what are the barriers that are stopping disabled entrepreneurs from reaching the same economic potential as non-disabled entrepreneurs? So in a nutshell, it's been a varied career path, but one that has very much evolved around that theme of entrepreneurship.
That's very exciting background you have got, and very unique as well. Do you think your entrepreneurship mindset has helped in career development?
Without going too much into my CV, I am not an economist or an accountant, and I'm certainly not a banker. So to become head of school for those subject areas was quite a brave decision. And actually, ultimately, I think a strength in that role was at such a diverse school. I was able to be impartial amongst those discipline groups, but also that I was always excited to learn more. And you surround yourself by people that have expertise you don't have. And I find that incredibly exciting, even if it's very uncomfortable. And I think one of the key remits and sort of themes of an entrepreneur is that they're not afraid to be uncomfortable and take the opportunity, with the self-confidence that you can still deliver, and you can sort of make it all come together at the end, and you know that you're not taking unnecessary risk, but you're brave enough to take the leap in the first place.
Yeah, and let me ask one question from a student perspective. You said you started a business when you were in undergraduate, just as a side hustle thing. What was one key takeaway from that journey?
So if I'm really honest, I think when we very first started out, there was no strategy, there was no sitting down and planning. It was just an opportunity, and it felt very low risk. But actually, what we didn't put in place was some of the really fundamental parts of running a business that would have helped us later on. So, for example, a really, really simple partnership agreement would have helped us down the line, because ultimately my then business partner decided he didn't want to be involved in the day-to-day anymore. He was given a fantastic career opportunity and stepped away. And we didn't really have anything to guide us on what we do in those situations. And I'm very fortunate. He's a dear friend, and we remain in very good contact today. But that affects friendships. We're all human, and I think the uncertainty, by not pausing at the start and saying, well, we need something like a deed of partnership. Maybe let's Google that and see if there's a template we could use. We maybe didn't lay the foundations that would have benefited us down the line. Other things, we just weren't very good at record keeping. We didn't have solid accounts. At best, I think we had an Excel file with a sort of record of transactions, but costs weren't being correctly recorded. So when you come to do either full accounts or when you come to do your self-assessment, you have to then start going back through drawers of receipts and online transactions to try and piece it together. And we could have made our lives much easier by just having a more systemic approach to some of that. That said, it was great fun, and I don't regret for 1 minute any of the way we did things. I think we were very sensible, and it brought us together as friends. But we could have made life less stressful, I think.
And if you wished that your university ecosystem would have helped you in shaping it more better, what that could have been?
So firstly, I'd say I was very fortunate that there was a lot of support. I was able to access a little bit of mentoring. There was a business plan competition that I enjoyed taking part in, and that was kind of retrospective because we'd already been doing things for a little while at that point. I think one area that could have been better would have been if I was a business undergraduate. I studied human resource management, and there was no point, I think, within my course that anyone taught to me about entrepreneurship. Even as an introduction to or an exploration of, I think the curriculum as it was then was very preparing you for a corporate world and walking you through the sort of knowledge, skills, and training that's going to support you with that. So it didn't really even occur to me that what I was doing was entrepreneurship or was a business. It was, it was a hobby that got out of control. And I think maybe there were other people in the class that might have been in a similar position, or may have, they just needed that spark or that conversation or that direction. So that's one area that I think could have been clearer for me. There was opportunity out there. Sometimes it's hard to find. And I know universities are big, complex places. And as a student in any one faculty, it can be hard to find out what's happening somewhere else. So those challenges, I think, are ones we constantly grapple with. But a better way of trying to reach out to students that might just be curious and might just be trying to understand whether or not that's for them or not. The curriculum's the place to start, I think.
Yeah. And coming to your research areas, you mentioned that you have done a PhD and you've got a couple of researches on understanding the university's role in supporting the MSMEs, startups, entrepreneurs, founders. So what inspired to dig out more research on these areas?
Well, I think firstly there was my own experience and that lived experience of saying, well, the university's helped me. Who else is it helping? And you realise as a student that universities are far more than education. There's the research activities, but there are extensive industry engagement parts of universities. There are collaborative projects that are happening with industry. And in some cases, there are spin-outs and partnerships and all exciting knowledge transfer programs, etc. But you don't really learn about that as an undergraduate. And so I think as I'd taken on a career within higher education, I became more aware of those and wanted to see how they all intersected and where the opportunities were. But I also I remember the first time as I was getting into my own sort of research area and coming to this realization that 99% of businesses in the UK are small. And that was such a wake-up call. And for those of us now in this space, we live and breathe these statistics and it's well understood. But the first time you hear it, it feels unbelievable. And so in that context, you've then got a university which typically within any one city or region is one of the largest employers. It's the creator of knowledge and hopefully the disseminator of knowledge. And I was really, really keen to explore how the university, with all of its expertise and resource available to it, can play a greater role in supporting that 99% of businesses and the thousands of new businesses that are created every year. And that for me was really, really important. What can we do around this? I think that the final dimension of my PhD was looking at sustainable systems for support. And what I meant by that was there are so many wonderful programs that do exist within universities, but they're often funded either through public funds or perhaps in the past European funds, etc. And once that project ends or once that funding ends, the program ends. And people's contracts in some cases are fixed or they get moved into other projects. The businesses that might have engaged in that one program have no follow-up from the university because the program's wrapped up and closed and the funding's ended. And so the relationship between the business and the university in some cases just comes to an end. A natural conclusion, we've completed the program, well done, off you go. And actually that doesn't feel terribly strategic. That doesn't feel very systemic. So I was really keen to understand a little bit more about where there is best practice, but where we could all do a little bit better so that from the small business perspective, it doesn't matter if programs are starting and finishing, they have a continuous opportunity to engage with a university, hopefully for mutual benefit.
And then do you think there is a perspective barrier when someone wants to go in entrepreneurship and they come across a lot of insecurities, fear, and also undefined structure, how it's going to go compared to the employment? So do you think there is a barrier about perspective from the universities or maybe from the parents that is causing a hurdle for the students to step into startups?
I think there might be, and I'd start off by saying that it doesn't have to be for everyone, okay? And if it's inherently not something that you're comfortable with or that feels like something you want to pursue, then that's a good signal that maybe it's not something you want to pursue. But we're conflating startup and entrepreneurship. And actually what we need to move towards is a degree of comfort around being more entrepreneurial as a society and as employees, with startup activity and being my own boss. And those two things, I think, because of the language often being used interchangeably, can be quite different in different disciplines. And people would say, well, I don't want an entrepreneurial heart surgeon or pilot or whatever. Actually, you probably do, because these are people that are dealing with rapidly evolving environments, that have to make decisions on the fly and that have to try and see things differently in order to change. That doesn't mean being reckless and seeking, wild opportunities that you might have seen in the media that are portrayed as being heroic, but it's that comfort and self-awareness about dealing with change and dealing with rapidly changing environments. By contrast, I think the idea of a student that might be pursuing the idea of having their own business or a startup, the key thing for me, I think, is making sure whilst the students at university, if they want to explore that, there's a safe place for them to do it. And, the guidance that teams like yours, UMCAR, offer to students, I think allows them to navigate and understand the risk. And if it is high risk, low reward, then they can seek that mentoring and advice around maybe not pursuing that or around how to mitigate some of that. If they are left to their own devices, the chances are some of them might make the wrong decision or take on risks that are uncalculated or that aren't appropriate. And I think that's where the system lets people down, because there isn't the scaffolding around them to give them that guidance or to see things differently. The other side of this is that doing it alone is even more difficult. And I think more and more what we want to try and nurture is the opportunity for different students, in this case, to network with each other and partner up on business ideas and share their collective skills and opinions and life experiences, And that's not something I think we've quite cracked as sort of a higher education system. I think far too often we end up with individuals exploring their own business idea, and they've not really had the opportunity to explore, would I like to do this as a partnership or involve other people? We get very protectionist about our idea and what it might turn into, but actually no growing business happens on the success of just one person. We've got to appreciate the skills that we might want to bring in.
Yeah, and it's nicely mentioned about the interchangeable words, startups and entrepreneurship, whereas maybe not startup might not be for everybody, but entrepreneurship is. So coming to entrepreneurial aspects, what are the key skills that students should acquire to progress in the career?
So the first skill that I always talk to students about in this space is the ability to network. And this is something we all do day in, day out, just by being curious humans and meeting new people. But to actually do that in a more strategic way and ask the right questions in the right space. And I think this is something that allows people to advance and be more successful in their careers, just as it is if they're involved in a startup. So deliberately trying to identify solutions to your problems by appreciating the human capital around you becomes really, really, really important. And for some, it's just not conscious. So they do some of it, but they could be more clear before they go into a conversation what it is they're looking for help with. I think for other, there's a bit of an anxiety or a bit of a nervousness around, well, what if someone doesn't like what I'm asking them or says no? Well, that's fine. You're only asking a question, aren't you? You're not there to cause offense. So, the last thing small businesses or entrepreneurs should be doing is going to an open directory or going to Google and trying to find an accountant, say, because you might find a good accountant, but you're just in the search engine gods. What's far more useful, and I think what's going to lead to a higher probability of success, is to use your network and say, do any of you know an accountant that's really good with small businesses? And then just by phrasing the question in that way, you've got a verified and validated referral. You've got someone's experience or someone else's reputation that you can use as an introduction to them. And I think that's the one trait that comes up again and again. Now, there are other things we can be testing ourselves on and trying to nurture more and more. So we talk a lot around this innovation piece and trying to think of different solutions to conventional problems. And that doesn't have to be overcomplicated. That can simply be, I think I know the answer to the problem, or I think I know the way forward. Can I challenge myself to come up with 3 alternative suggestions? And once I've developed that, if the first one's still my preferred choice, then so be it. But I've afforded myself the space and maybe challenge myself to think about some alternatives. And if we become more habitual in that space, we don't just take the first idea that comes to our head and run with it, but we say, okay, well, I hadn't thought of it that way. Or more interestingly, share that challenge with someone else and say, how would you tackle this? Oh, I've not thought of it in that way. And we start to appreciate the life world and the skills around us and those different perspectives, rather than always assuming that our way must be the right way, something I've probably fallen foul of in the past. And I think the final one is to be a little bit more extroverted when you can, and just put yourself out there. Don't worry about the vulnerability that comes with that. If you see a guest speaker that might not be from your faculty or subject area or something that you would ordinarily go to, you've got little to lose by attending, and it might just change some of your thinking, might inspire you, it might lead to a conversation with someone there. And they're often the gateways to different, to your own advancements and development of your own thoughts. So even if you are naturally quite an introverted person and wouldn't ordinarily go to those things, if you can push yourself to attend or to go virtually or to, attend that workshop, attend that drop-in session, there is little to lose by doing so. I think Woody Allen says 80% of success is showing up. Some of that has to be true. We've got to just push ourselves out of our comfort zone just a little bit more than we normally would in order to find those opportunities.
Yeah. And you mentioned about introvert and extrovert. Let me represent the entire introvert community and ask you this question. I keep coming across saying, keep yourself open to people, network. It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. So, what tip you want to give to those who are naturally introvert and how they should be able to push themselves to this kind of environment and ecosystem?
Yeah, and I completely get that. And there have been many situations where I've got into a room and thought, I'm just going to check my emails because this is all a bit scary, right? And I think that's something that is human nature and we've all shared. But equally, you can say, well, if I was going to attend something like this, which am I most comfortable with? Or where do I start? And there are some events that are more safe spaces. So, something that is with fellow students. That's a safe space. I'm not going into a room full of executives or full of people from a particular group. I'm going into a relatively safe space, and I'm just going to be just like going to a class, just like going to a lecture. So I think there is an element of just trying to, it's still probably moving out of our comfort zone, but the reality is this is in a location I'm aware of, with values that I'm aware of, and with people that probably feel a little bit like me. Then there are other ways of achieving it as well. And, we do have fantastic online systems now. Using LinkedIn effectively can be one of those if you don't want to do all the face-to-face things straight away. Approaching people via an email just to say, look, I didn't catch up with you at the event, I couldn't attend it, but is there an opportunity for us to have a chat on Teams or a phone call? But ultimately I think that's about you reflecting on what you're comfortable with, and then just trying to make a small push outside of that. It doesn't have to be jumping in the deep end and hoping that, just blindly hoping that it'll be all right. It's something, start in an area that you feel more comfortable and safer with, and then start pushing yourself further. But it doesn't have to be the thing you get up in the morning and look forward to, but it might still have value.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So I think we have covered a lot of areas, such as the skills and what the importance of entrepreneurship in the employment area, and the role of universities in supporting the SMEs and MSMEs and student startups and future founders. So before concluding this podcast, would you like to give some tips and advice to our students here at ARU?
Absolutely. So I think I'll reiterate that first one of engage. We have such fantastic programs of support out there that you may not have seen through your course, or that you may not have seen within your faculty, but it will change your perspective of things just by engaging. And I think that's something that we should all be doing more of. It's free, and it's part of the program. It's part of what you're buying into as a student at ARU, and something that is there for you to take. So I think that's a first takeaway. The second is one of interdisciplinarity. So, often once you join a course, you know your cohort, you maybe know a few other people in your school or in your faculty as you've been around, but you don't always get the chance to meet students in other faculties or in other subject areas. Yet once you enter the real world of business, or the real world of the private sector or area you end up in, you will be working in a very interdisciplinary space. You'll be working with suppliers and contractors and internal people or stakeholders, etc. And I think the sooner we get more comfortable being in each other's presence and understanding each other's life worlds a little bit more, the easier that transition beyond university becomes. If you are pursuing an entrepreneurial sort of career path and deciding this is for you, then that's even more important, because certainly initially you are the CEO, you're the finance director, you're the stock taker, you're the delivery person, you're the tea person. You do all of that. You wear so many different hats, which means you will have to engage with different people wearing those different hats at different times. And if you're not naturally from that space, or you're perhaps a medical student, you haven't spent a lot of time working with accountants, it really helps if you've got that your own network, but you've also got that familiarity with those different disciplines. And I think that also links nicely into that point around partnering and working together. It's better to have 50% of something great than 100% of something that's flat. So think about, is there an opportunity here for, as I did when I started, for me as a business student to work with a computing and IT student on creating something together. We have very different skill sets, very different life experiences, and that all adds enormously to the way that the business evolves and the way that we work, and the way that we develop as a team. Frankly, starting that on my own just wouldn't have got past the first month. It wouldn't have been a success. So these are all, I think they're sort of the three key areas that I'd encourage students to be thinking about.
Thank you so much, Tom.